Bam! Welcome. It's Sunday morning, and we are gathered to worship at the altar of rock and knowledge. We are here, in fact, to eat that sacred fruit of knowledge and share it and run around naked. Firstly, if you're watching this on any other fucking things, jump on Angelspit's Twitch, which is Twitch whatever /Angelspit music. Diana and Adam, stop passing notes or I'll make you read them out to the rest of the class. And this fucking craziness was made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. Many of the people here are members, and my God, thank you guys so much. And I should, oh my God, this Friday night there's a gig. That's my gig music. Do you like it? That's not the fucking right thing. I have so many things. Hold on, I'm nearly done.
Track.
It's a great track. Friday night, there's a gig. It's a gig on Friday night, and it's coming. And here we go. April 2nd. That's next Friday night. We're doing crazy shit. Boom. Jump on that and join us. It's going to be mad. Many of the people here will be involved in that mayhem. Okay, and this is that, and everything is moving to Sundays now. The Art of Rock thing that we do on Saturdays is now moving on to Sundays, but you'll figure it out. So every second Sunday we're going to be doing this, and every other Sunday we're going to be doing a synth meditation. And I shouldn't call it that because it's not meditation at all. It's delve into horror. Alex, we're going to start those questions. And Alex, you have a fantastic question. Ask me that question.
Yes. When you record a drum machine or something, maybe a sequencer pattern or so, would it be best to sequence it via MIDI or clock or whatever? Or would you rather record it at the same BPM and let it maybe then move it in post to the right starting position? That's basically my question.
That is a brilliant question. If anybody else has thoughts about that question, I throw the floor open.
I mean, I can jump in on that.
Jump in on that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so a couple of ways that you can do it. Syncing it is a really good way to do it. If you ever plan to use the drum machine live, you should get all your sync stuff worked out when you're working on the recording stuff anyway, because it'll make it a lot easier for you in the future. That said, you know, if you have an older drum machine and it simply doesn't want to talk or whatever, you can record it through your interface as audio and then use the sort of fine-tune adjustments to sort of slide things into place if it's a little bit off. Like every machine is going to be like it, you know, like 120 beats per minute is not necessarily 120 beats per minute to every single machine. It might be 120.001. You know, so if you do record it as audio, you might have to do a little bit of time shifting or shift some of the like actually when I sample beats and then I lay them up next to like a drum machine track, a lot of times I have to take like the snare drum and move that snare drum over a little bit to get it lined up so it doesn't go out of phase or flam. So there's a few ways that you can approach that problem.
The way I work with a bunch of drum machines, and the way I handle it is I use all my instruments themselves just as the sound sources. All my sequences come from the DAW. So instead of having the timing issue between machines, the master machine is dictating what turns on and what turns off the entire time. And then they're just simply providing me the sound. So then in that regard, what I have to do is mix it.
I think that's your best solution if you plan to take it live and use the machines for their sounds live.
Alex, what machine are you using?
I'm using the Electron Octatrack and
right.
also the Model Cycles, which is like their budget drum machine.
Sync that
But I
fucker.
also have
Go ahead.
an MPC, but I hardly use it.
Is it the old one or the new one? How old's the MPC?
It's like it came out in 2002.
All right, awesome.
So that's a sweet piece of gear, man. But that
Hey, Adam.
MPC
Adam. Thank you. Firstly, if it has USB, sync to the USB because the USB is way better than MIDI. Hurts me to say that. MIDI's actually horrible, especially for syncing, because it's a really old communications, and even with MIDI 2.0, I mean, who gives a shit? But you're dealing with something that's early 80s. Like it's 28 kilobaud. It's awful. So use USB. Secondly, a lot of drum machines have got groove things built into them. And my advice is use them. Because, especially the MPC, that Akai stuff has the best grooves. And I'm pretty sure they kept it throughout all of the different incarnations of the funk of those machines. So I would advise use the groove that's on those machines because you're going to get some really cool shit going on. As far as live goes, that's something else. So step 1 is sync them. Step 2 is if it's a 4-bar phrase, do a 4-bar pre-roll and then kick it, because some drum machines take a beat or a second or a microsecond to adjust in. If it's a 2-bar phrase, give it 2 bars. If it's 1 bar, give it 1 bar. That's it. Does anybody else want to add something? Because I could talk about drum machines all day. Adam, go.
So, well, getting back to the live thing, the MPC is a great tool for live performance and just recording, pad jamming. So my advice with the MPC is click record and just start jamming, and then go back to those pieces to edit.
That's actually really interesting. Like, as far as the process of composition, I've heard people talk about this. This could turn into a rant. Let's go ranting. About how some people, when they write, they will put stuff into record and just go. I personally have never done that. I'm only doing that now with this thing with Ryan. As you can tell, my process is really, really, really structured. But doing this other thing is really, really fun. So I want to hear, what are your thoughts on, let's call it, writing music through jamming, writing electronic music through jamming? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Unless, Alex, if you want more on your question, just jump in. Or are we good?
Well, maybe one crazy idea would be to sync the DAW to the drum machine, but I don't think that's too feasible or has any benefits. I don't know.
Yes, you can do that, but the problem you've got is, exactly as Adam said, there are really small differences between different BPMs. I've actually found Ableton to Cubase to Pro Tools is different. I'm talking 1 or 2 BPM sometime. So, and this is another really interesting thing about so I would say, as a computer is the master, drum machine is the slave. It's also really interesting that when they're talking, they do go out of time. And I am starting to embrace that, me personally, going, okay, cool, they're out of time, I'm going to use it. And when I say out of time, a 16th might get knocked back a couple of ticks, you know? And it's really interesting that everybody wants that 80s sound, but they don't. I'm going to just mute you, Tanner, because you're got... the 80s, everybody wants that 80s sounds, but nobody actually goes, yeah, but the drum machines are out. When you listen to some of the great hits from, you know, the 80s, for example, 19 by Paul Hardcastle, or almost anything Depeche Mode did, or anything Human League did, any of that shit, you'll hear the drum machines move. And they do move a little bit too. when they're doing a 16th on the hi-hat, if you listen really carefully, the 16ths are like, whoa, it burped. And that's because they're using really old computers for the sync timing. And that shit goes out of tune. The obviously the analog stuff like the 909s and the 808s and the KR55s and all that stuff doesn't too much because they're using analog clock, but there is still inaccuracies in there, and I should stop talking right now. So, Alex, is there anything else we want to delve into on this one?
No, I think I'm settled. Maybe to your question, my first band, we used to write songs with jamming, and for myself, I tried to jam, record it, and then in another step, just take it apart, maybe chop it, slice it, make little audio files, and then rearrange them in a maybe a more controlled manner and use that as a composition. I think that works really well because it's like best of both worlds.
Actually, the band I played in when I was younger was the same way. We would rehearse 3 times a week, and we would just use a boom box and tape the whole rehearsal so that we could listen back. We had as Carl says, very structured, right? We had very structured rehearsals, in that we would like get to rehearsal, take a few minutes to just warm up a little bit, and then play the set, and then work on the stuff that we were writing. And then we would jam, and we would jam on the stuff that we were writing. And those sessions would turn into like, oh, that thing, because like our vocalist would literally just like make it up as he was going along, and sometimes those lyrics would end up being part of the song. Like, he'd have a good couple of turns of phrase or whatever, or like, especially with the guitar player freestyling, a lot of times the bassist and I would just grab a groove and let the other players riff away, and we would work out fills between the rhythm section, and that's how we got really locked, was by jamming, because we learned to predict each other. And then of course with the other players in the writing process, taking those long jams where it's just like, okay, just keep vamping this riff for 15 minutes and let the guitar player solo over the thing, so that we can take that recording, then listen back, and then carve out the pieces to create an arrangement that'll be the solo in the song, the 8 bars or whatever that it ends up being. Now when I'm working on music, like a lot of times I will start messing around and jamming on something, messing around with the arpeggiators or whatever, and start carving it all out. And it's just kind of it's more of a process of elimination than anything. It's, sort of cherry picking the best little moments of the thing and going, hey, that right there is the thing. Like you kind of know it when you hear it. It's that thing that gives you the little goosebumps or whatever, or that little thing that sparks yes in your brain. And it, when you're in the composition phase, some of it is very, very technical, and you have like a solid idea. And sometimes those solid ideas come from the more amorphous ones, like, like Carl doing his synth jam sessions, right? Like, you never know what you're going to end up finding in something like that turns into like, hey, that's a really great riff. And then you'll like be falling asleep, and it'll be running through your head, and next thing you know, you've got a chorus. So I think jamming is like super valuable, and it's a really good way to practice technique too, because you can just, repeat over and over. One of the things that I learned early was just keep playing if you screw up. And I think jamming is really helpful for that, because like you just don't care as much when you're jamming, and it lets a different part of your brain go free. I'll shut up.
That's great. Anybody else? This is a great. Let's talk about this.
Basically, I agree with everything you said in that regard. That's literally the core of how I write songs. Is I start by jamming something. You know, it's literally give me a metronome, give me a something that I can kind of just sink my brain to and go.
Give me the windshield wipers, give me the turn signal, give me anything I can tap to, and it will start to turn into something.
That's right. I mean, often it's literally like that. I'll just kind of start tapping or something like that. And that's where I use drum machines and other things, you know, because I'll sit there and I'll get on and just kind of start jamming, or I'll grab a synth and start jamming that way. But then, yeah, and that's why I also name everything after X Files, by the way. They're not done. They're just jams to start with.
If I can be interruptive real quick and jump back to something Carl said earlier. Oh, hello, Toby. If I can jump back to what Carl was saying earlier about how everybody wants the 80s sound, but nobody wants the out of timeness that made the 80s sound. Blue Monday is probably one of the most famous examples in that, like, that beautiful bass line came from the sequence starting a half beat off.
Yep. And a lot of what I mentioned is actually Drumulator and SP12 by Emu Systems as well, because they were famous for drifting a little bit. The Lin drums aren't that bad, but I don't know why I'm saying this. Who gives a shit? Hi Meow Meow. Yeah, this is a really interesting thing that I find that, you know, on the moment creating something new, it's always really crazy. I have a question, and that is that when you're doing this, how experimental do you get with your drums? Like, is it you always fall back into a 2/4 thing, or where do you go? Do you even use drums? Do you use metallic clanks? Let's get inspired. Go.
Most often, if I'm going to jam, most often with the Demon Hate, I am trying to incorporate the
You know, yeah. Was that a grimace, Carl?
I bloody muted everyone. I apologize.
Oh, did
Yeah. Actually, Adam, can I stop you? Brett, really quickly, can you just repeat what you said? Because I muted that. I apologize.
That's all right. I forgot exactly what I was saying.
So you were saying with the Demon Hate, it's usually 2/4, but
yeah. So like in previous musical projects and such, it's been anything goes. However, with the Demon Hate, I do tend to stick to more traditional instruments, drums and whatnot. I'm actually trying to capture part of the metal sound out of that, and they were limited. So to kind of give a kind of uniformity to the sound in that project, yeah. In terms of using any other sound for a drum or clanks, bangs, and such like that, some of my favorite are weapons. They make great drums. Outside of that, anything goes, really.
awesome. Thank you, Brett. Sorry about that. Adam, back to you.
And chink and take your money. No, well, I mean, that's a great example of using the samples for percussion, man. Like what Diplo did with MIA there. That was brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so on the contrary there, I'm one of those cats that likes a lot of syncopation. I like unusual time signatures, and I like changing time signatures in something. That said, it depends a lot on the venue that you intend to have your music played in. You know, like a rock and roll show, like let's take a couple of examples of like good old rock and roll bands. Like, you know, if you've got like the Motley Crue kind of kind of thing compared to like a Jane's Addiction, Stephen Perkins, all off time fills kind of stuff, it has a really different feel. And so the type of show that you're playing is going to, you know, it's going to change a lot. And the other thing is the sort of rooms that you're playing it in. Like if you're making music to play to a dance floor, you know, you got to think about the audience that you're playing to as well. So, you know, a broader, I don't know, how do I say it? Like a more open beat is going to sound better in a bigger club, like a more minimal beat. Whereas if you're, you know, if your intended audience is like, you know, listening to hi-fi or headphones or something like that, you can get away with a lot more complexity. Like, you know, like jazz music, for instance, you know, is not, you know, that's a very engaged listener music as opposed to music that's just intending to move your body with a subwoofer.
That's
I was going to say, kind of going back to experimentation in that same regard. It didn't sound all that great, but it was an experiment I did was actually creating a track that could be played forward and backward and still sound the same.
an interesting thing is, you know, for example, I want to touch on really briefly. You mentioned using time signature changes, which is something I never do. But it's funny that Africa, for example, has got a 6/4 bar in it. And one of my favorite PJ Harvey songs and Soundgarden songs are both in 5, and obviously March of the Pigs. But yeah, it's really interesting that because I went to, you know, when I was in uni, Mr. Bungle was big. So everybody was making the most complex time signatures they possibly can because masturbation. And it was like, it's put me off it for life because if you're going to create something that is purely to confuse your audience, then you're a wanker. You know, you're not making music for other people. You're making it for yourself, and you're being a dick, in my humble opinion. I mean, but then when you look at music that has successfully said, here's 7/8, and you can dance to it. It makes you trip, but you can dance to it. Here's 6/4, here's 7/8, here's, I said 7/8, 7/4, you know, whatever, and there's a groove in it. You know, Pink Floyd's Money, isn't that 7/4? That they make it work. And I think that's the skill. That's what's really important. I think, as much as I will always talk about the openness about our beloved dark alternative scene, I don't know if a song in, you know, 7/4 or 5/4 will work and will fill a dance floor. But hey, man, I could be wrong. Yeah, and someone's going to say March of the Pigs. Go, Adam.
Well, I will say this from the DJ perspective, songs that are in odd time signatures are a lot more confusing to DJs. So if you're intending to play it to a dance floor, like I'm saying about wankers is something that kind of comes up a lot in the jazz music scene as well, where there's kind of a point at which it's just you're really just playing for other jazz musicians, if that makes sense. And but I agree with Carl that, you know, if you're intending it for a broader audience, then you have to bear that in mind with what you're doing, and make it accessible, so to speak.
I heard thank you, Adam. I hit bloody mute again. Fuck, I've got a shortcut here that I'm using to type, and every now and then I strike the shortcut key by accident because I suck. It's really interesting that I just totally forgot what I was talking about.
Nailed it.
No, it's gone.
I think it's okay to experiment with time signatures, but I think you should then simplify other elements of the song so the listener isn't overwhelmed, or maybe the special feature, as in another time signature, can more shine, because if everything's complex, it becomes more and more noise.
I completely agree with that. That having something interesting happen with the rhythm needs to be pocketed well. You know, we've talked about pockets in composition before on these conversations. I think that well, one of the other things that's interesting when you've got a track that's going along and then something happens in the beat where it changes a little bit and goes back, kind of what Carl was saying a moment ago. Now he wants to get
No, yours. Keep going.
Well, basically what I'm saying is I think it creates an interesting hook in the music. Like it's one of those things, like when it's done in, you know, that nice, you know, sort of salt and pepper kind of, not the band, but like, you know, a little bit of spice, not too much spice, that it makes for really good hooks to mess with the timing on something. And
Yes, fantastic. Two things. One, so here's a challenge. In a middle 8, go 7/8. Go 5/4. In your middle 8 of the track, try it there. That might work. Because, you know, sometimes in those middle 8s, the beat disappears. So you might have an opportunity. Secondly, Alec, I don't... secondly, try experimenting with polyrhythms, because they're always good fun. Hi, Alec. Polyrhythms are great fun to mess with, because, you know, you can have stuff that's tumbling over each other. And it's a really good thing. Like, you might have a hi-hat pattern, and that hi-hat pattern's on 7/8. So it's always displacing itself, or a little bleep or something. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Adam, go.
I have a good listening example for interesting time shifty track. It's the Presets Steamworks. I'll put it in the chat. But it's a really interesting one for like listening to the way that the rhythms of the different instruments work together but go off of each other and then return because they're in different timing. Neat.
I have a preset story, but perhaps another time. I did a story, my old band, because Presets are from Sydney, and I did a gig with Presets when they were just starting and my band was just starting, because we were two weird bands in Sydney, and it was in this church, which was actually converted to a big bondage, I don't know what you would call it, fucking House of Sin. It was fantastic. And anyway, they were bloody great. They fucking killed it. Just a guy, and they were live, totally live. Little SH2 synth, distorted mic, and a drum kit. Totally live. Killed it. I was so impressed. I will stop crapping on now, and I will throw the floor open to anybody else who wants to crap on or ask a question.
What's up, Julius?
Welcome.
I got a question. It's completely different from what we just talked about, so if we want to close this topic.
The floor is yours, Julius, baby.
Thank you. I wondered, what is a good loud figure it out now, so maybe somebody can explain what's the right loudness for YouTube.
So,
I
Adam?
will say on YouTube, I haven't had a problem with loudness being, your normal CD. That's what Carl is talking about when he says Unity zero. Is the zero dB peaks basically. I tend to master it just under that anyway because I like a little bit more room for dynamics and pressing the vinyl. But like when we are streaming over Twitch and all, we keep the peaks at like -6 because if it goes over -6, that's when we start hearing the high end get swishy and start hearing crunch. It's all because of how much it's compressed, because it is being compressed down to MP3, and it is being compressed, to like 192 or whatever. So it's kind of the same thing. Like when you compress down to MP3, everything gets closer, if that makes sense. So you have to kind of account for that. And going over streaming live, keeping it lower. So if you're like listening on a laptop or a phone or something, and it's like peaking at 0, the high end just sounds awful, piercing. So we generally keep it to a -6 for peaks.
Okay, I shall try that. Thank you.
I find that, yes, totally agree. I'll even push it a little harder, and I'll try and get, because I monitor everything as well as I can. I'll try and get -3, but -6 is good.
You can get a little more out of it if you need to. There's also in the OBS settings, there's a limiter there. So if you're, I don't use it when we're doing the DJ shows because we've trained ourselves by ear to do that live. But like on the video channel, I use a compressor and a limiter on there because the track volumes are extremely various between all the artists that we get videos from.
Thanks.
So we get a much more consistent sound by having a limiter set to I believe it's set at like -5 dB, and then we have the compression at about like 6 or 7 to 1. I think it's pretty compressed.
Thank you, Adam. If it's pre-recorded, I would say go 0 dB or go -1 dB, and then compress it like apply mastering pretty hard, because the thing about lower bit rates, to my understanding, is that the higher the volume, the more information is being used to shape that sound out, to actually notate that sound in digital information. So if you have something that's 12 dB, maximum volume is -12, there's not as much bits of information going in to describe the quality of that sound. But when you go to -1 dB, I think it's about 4 times more bits of information going in to describe that. So you'll hear it pure. You'll hear it more better.
Like 8 times more, actually. It's exponential.
Thank you. So I would be saying master it pretty hard, and if you can, get a professional to master it, because I'm all about that shit. You know me, I'm all about it. There's a guy in England actually named Reza, and he's bloody awesome. And I'll definitely give you Reza's bloody contact details, because that guy's great. It's real. This is an interesting question as well. That in a perfect world, we try and get stuff mastered. It only needs to be mastered once, and that should work across different things. It won't work on vinyl because vinyl's got a different. It's not digital. It's squiggly lines cut into vinyl, so it's a different response. But I've been told that if you get it done, if you get the mastering done correctly, excuse me, you only need to get it done once. I am the most awful mastering person in the world, but I am better than most people I hear do mastering. So we're all fucking awful. Get a professional. Get a fucking professional, because a professional's got several pairs of headphones. They've got better speakers. Their room is set up, and they understand about phasing issues, and they understand about the problem that people love spreading stuff out across, a stereo field, and they can take care of all that stuff. Like a real mastering person can do that. Whereas if you master your own work, it's sometimes hard to separate from that. This is what I think personally. Blah. Somebody else jump in. Hold on, I got a question. Thank you, Aussie Rob71. How does Angelspit balance his live time between vocal performance and playing with gear? Do you pre-record the sequence, then tweak filters, etc.? Hard to tell with strobing lights and stuff. Would love to see you talking through your process one day. I'll talk about that next. And there's also a comment that there's some good plugins to manage your levels to export to YouTube, etc. If anybody else has a question, if we want to continue on this one, because mastering and mastering for different outputs is always a good one. If anybody wants to add in, otherwise I'll talk about live, because I know there's a lot of people here who've got a lot of experience with live, and that would be a good thing to jump into because it's a big spiel. The floor is open. Either we talk about mastering or we talk about live. Okay, we'll talk about live. It was the hand dance, man. I'm telling you. People hear that hand and they go, whoa. So, Aussie Rob, Aussie Tar, you are Australian, because only an Australian will say tar. Okay, that answers that question. Wife and I watched a Quentin Tarantino movie last night, Death Proof, and it was great. The only problem was there was a New Zealander in it. Couldn't understand a fucking word she was saying. It's like, oh yes, oh clearly, oh yeah, wow. It's like, horrible sound in my head. It was like the Australian accent, but more evil. Thank you. I'll get on to live playing now. Anyway, so what I do live is there's a bunch of stuff that's on the music computer. I will use two computers. I use the streaming computer, which is this computer here, and I keep muting shit on accident because I'm a fucking idiot. And there is the music computer, which is right beside it. And the music computer is basically playing the standard instrumental backing track back, which is the same as you hear on the CD, but the vocals are taken out. What I do with that is I mash the shit out of that. And it goes through modular distortion and all sorts of bits and pieces to fuck it up. I also take some big gouges of EQ out because I'm adding a whole bunch of other stuff. So I use a BeatStep Pro with that's being run via USB. And so it's beautifully in time. So on Cubase, it's in arrangement mode and everything is tempo locked. So this song, because it's 140 BPM, it's 140 BPM. One MIDI channel going off that is lights. I'm using DMX for the lights that are here, but they're not turned on right now. So all the lights are sequenced, and that gets converted into DMX, and it does its thing. And it uses like, and I can switch lights on the 16ths. They're great. Second is the cameras, changing the camera angles on. Hello and welcome from Russia. Changing the camera angles on OBS. And that's also via MIDI because OBS has got this fantastic thing that will allow incoming MIDI. So MIDI comes off that computer, is sent to the music, to the streaming computer. And this will allow me to change the scenes. Because I have like 30 scenes and it's clipping through all the scenes. And it can do that on the 16th as well, which is great. So I can be cutting shit on the 16th. But I don't do that because I'm going to give people epilepsy. And the next thing that's going is the vocoder. So the vocoder is being fed a recording of a big fat analog wave file that goes to the vocoder, and I'm using my headset, so I'm interacting with that live. Another thing that's happening is there's another MIDI channel, which is the actual vocoder notes as well. I don't know why I do that, I just do. So there's like double vocoder chunk, and it's all going into the vocoder. I'm using a horrible, fat, awful fucking plug-in on the music computer because I hate plugins, and that gets added into the mix. I also add noise and mayhem into the vocoder, and it comes to me. And then the headset will modulate that vocoder. Another thing in MIDI that's happening is I'm sending MIDI information to the main vocal processor, which is a TC Electron voice live rack, and it's fucking the best money I've ever spent, man. It was like a lot of money when I got it originally. You can get them like $500 now or something. It's so good because, you know, you spend all this money on your synthesizers and your guitars and stuff, but you spend nothing on your vocals. And ultimately, your vocals are critically important. They are so important. And the great thing about the TC is that I can, obviously I'm sending program changes to change the patch. And it's interesting, it takes about a quarter of a second for the new patch for it to clear everything out and then pull the new patch in. So firstly on the main mic, that goes straight into the TC. The TC is compressing it, EQing it, distorting it. Great fucking distortion. Chorus, EQ. It's cloning my voice, so there will be 4 Carls. Wow, that would be hell, wouldn't it? 4 Carls making extra chunk, but then I'm also sending MIDI information in, doubling the vocoder, so that it will cause a harmony of my voice. So if I'm singing or screaming and I push that note C, it will take one essence of my voice and quantize it, pitch correct it into a C. And I have 8 voices that I can stack up of harmonizations of my voice. I highly recommend you get a good fucking vocal processor, because if you use your voice in your music is your voice is a core instrument, like fucking seriously. And then I haven't even got to the modular. So because I use the BeatStep Pro, I can change the beats and everything else on the fly, and that's fun because sometimes I'll put a 4 on the floor under the song, or I might put a syncopated thing under it, and I have kick snare hats as far as the drums go. I have other pads that are set up to be accents or adding sub, because the kick module I use is the Mutant kick, the DB9 from fucking Hex Inverter. This is the greatest kick drum module in the world. Fucking so good. It's not only can you modulate the shit out of the sound, but you can do it all with CV Gate. So you can send it a message to say, I want the tail to be longer, or it's got a sub oscillator as well that will blow your fucking mind. And then you add subs to this thing and then you distort the shit out of it. Great distortion. You can actually control the volume of that via CV Gate as well. So I've got it set up that the kick might be going dung, gung, dung, dung, gung, dung. But the first one is going to be extra long, so it's going to be down, dung, 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 down, dung, dung. Then I'll set it up so that the first one, I'll set up another trigger, so it's sending a trigger to the fucking thing. So the first one and the one over here have the subs in it. So it'll be boom, dung, dung, boom, boom, gung, gung. And it's so good. Fucking love it. It's the tits. Then I send the snare thing as the claps. So that's the Mutant hat, the Mutant claps. And it's the same. It's bloody great. And what I love about these things as well is that you can change the pitch. there's a CV input here that I send a random signal to on the claps, just itty bitty. So it's not always the same pitch. It's always slightly variant. It might be within a third or something. And because I'm controlling it from the beat step, I can change what's notes. So that it might go bum, clack, bum, clack, or it might go bum, clack, bum, clack. And I can just go over and change that. I can, because it's the beat step, I can mute it, I can pull it out, I can do all that sort of shit. It's great fun. Then I got the hats, which is the mutant hi-hats and everything else. I fucking love Hex Inverter. I'm pushing Hex Inverter right now. And Hex Inverter are about to release the greatest oscillator in history, which is the Mind Phaser. And it's, holy shit. It's so good. It's ridiculous. It's really fucking good. I don't like pushing shit on this show. I like keeping it. So I'm going to stop. I'll stop pushing Hex Inverter right now. Hex Inverter, Canada's best. I can't push Hex Inverter anymore, but if I could, I'd push Hex Inverter. Then I'd push Dopefar. Yeah, so that's the kick. That's
also like Behringer, right?
Suck my dick, you fucker. Hey, wow, check it out, everyone. His mic doesn't work anymore. Anyway, you fucking talk to me about shit Behringer. Anyway, yeah, so then there's all the bleeps and the buzzes and all of that shit. And I'm using two sequencers. I'm actually using a Behringer sequencer because somebody sent it to me as a joke. And I use it. It's fine, whatever. I have a lot of issues with it, but we won't get into that right now. The main sequencer I use is the Dopefar A155 and the A154 controller. This fucking Dopefar sequencer is so good. You can do so much madness with it. So those two guys are going. And here's something interesting. Because I'm going like... because there's a lot of tempo changes... Analog stuff trips sometimes, and the beat step can trip up a little bit. So sometimes I lose a beat, sometimes things go out of sync, but that's all on the clock side of it, and I'm still figuring that out. Like, I don't know if it's the clock output from the beat step, or if it's the, I'm not actually sure what it is, but, yeah, I don't know what that is. But anyway, so that's something I'm always dealing with. And so I do all the blip blops and shit like that live, and I'm twiddling knobs and having a gay old time. And I just grabbed the Dopefar 3D joystick because I used to have the Thurman, but I got rid of it because I had issues as far as... The Thurman's fucking great, but as far as having it in my rig and the practicality of it working because everything's so close. So the Thurman was always firing off. I used it live. Love it! And I had the old joystick, which I still have. I've had this thing for 20 years, and it's still going like a champion. And then, yeah, I just got the 3D joystick, and it's just great. So they're the live shows. When I'm jamming with Ryan, it's all of this stuff, but I'm not using the computer. And there's other tricky things going on, because then I'm using this stuff over here. Because this is the fuck around with the shit live, and then I'm using gates and trigs, and instead of the vocoder track coming off the music hardware, it's coming off the K2000, and I've got it set up so that the high octave or the middle octaves are actually playing the vocoder. I use the same headset, so. If I was to give anybody advice, it would be, don't do something as complex as this. Because when shit goes wrong, it really, really goes wrong. And another thing I have going on is I'm controlling, when I do it live with Ryan, the bottom octave of the K2000, and I've also got a foot pedal as well, modulates the pitch of heaps of stuff. So I might have a sequence going, and it gets quantized. I've got a little quantizer up here. So every time I twitch a knob, it'll push it into the closest minor third note of a minor 7 scale. That's a Dopefar A156 quantizer, if anyone cares, and it's fucking great. But then I've got other stuff coming off. Every time I hit the foot pedal will add note information that will move everything up or everything down. So everything kind of stays in this pitch. It's great when it works. And, you know, sometimes for some reason, someone wants to stop talking. And that's the problem. When you got a whole bunch of stuff going on, it's like, what the fuck's going wrong? So I have a backup plan that in case shit fucks up, which I've fallen back on so many times. Because if you're in the middle of doing a set, you can't, what's going wrong here? You can't do that. It's like, it's broken, flip the switch and go to plan B. And plan B is don't use what's broken. That's a great fucking plan B. And that means, like, you know, I'll pull stuff out of the live tracks, and I'll just make it simple. So at worst case scenario, it's going to be me screaming along to a bunch of live tracks, and that's still a show. Because that's the question you've always got to ask. Do you still have a show? And is your audience really going to give a fuck if blah, blah, blah stops working? And the answer is usually no. They won't hear it. They'll only hear you going, oh, fuck, it's not working anymore. Oh, something went wrong. And don't do that. I've done that on a few occasions. Don't do that. Thanks, Diana. Diana knows I've done that. And there have been a few occasions where it's, okay, show stopped. Like if the beat step crashes or if something goes epically wrong, it's like, I've got no show. So, yeah. If anybody has questions, I know a lot of you guys do live shit as well. I'd love to hear from you. Go.
I have a question. Back when you when it was possible to do venue gigs, what did you give the front of house engineer from audio stream or audio cable perspective?
I would try hard not to give them headaches. And what I would give them is, because I've got one of those, I've got an 8-channel DI that was built into the rig. And I had the, I've still got it on here. It's track left and right, because everything, when I do it live in a venue, it's 1,000 times more simple. There's no drum machines, there's no blip bloops, there's nothing. There is a computer playing a backing track, the TC vocal thing, and that's it. Hold on, I'm going to turn my volume down because it's so fucking loud. So I will give them a stereo track. Usually the venue is mono. And if it's a mono venue, I'll say, please take them both and pan them center. I will give them a mono of my vocal processor. I will give them a mono of the modular. And I will give them a mono of the backing vocalist, Matt, who used to go out with me live. Tanner, I just saw your hand. Matt, who used to go out with live, he had another TC as well in the rig. And the thing about a rig, like a 9-rack, I think it was 8-rack, it had the TC, which was 2 rigs, one bay of Dopefer, and I'd say to the mixing guy, think of it like it's karaoke, and there's 2 people yelling, and you might have to change their volumes. You'll never have to change the master mix. You might want to scoop out a bit at 2K, just so our voices push through more. And then there's going to be this weird blip-blop shit coming out, and you might want to treat that like it's an electric guitar, a lead guitar. Luckily, increasingly, venues know more about mixing live bands, but I remember when they didn't. So I gave the mixing guy 5 tracks. And if possible, if I had to go to 4, I'd just take one of the live tracks out. If we have to go to 3, because that's a reality you've got to work with, is that it doesn't matter where you play in the bill, they might come back to you and say, I've only got 4 tracks. And if you're a headlining band and a complete asshole, you're going to take, we need 30 tracks, or we need 12 tracks of your 16-track board. That means that the support bands, they get nothing. So I've come into it when I'm headlining, it's like I have 5 tracks and I can go down to 4 super easy because I'm touring with I got to look after the bands. I've got to make sure that everyone gets, good sound. Because if you don't, this is their chance. You got to give them a go. I'm going to shut up now. Does anybody want to jump in?
Looks like Killer Witch has got his hand up.
Killer Witch, go! Thank you. Tanner, if you're still there. Huh?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just looking for my sense power supply. I misplaced it, and yeah. But what I was going to share was how I perform live. And what I've been using lately, mostly hardware, and I've even found a way to run the songs through the synths so that I don't overheat my computer, because previously, for the past 4 years, I relied on mostly plugins, and it would cause glitches live, overheating, and it would just really stress out my computer. So now I use hardware, and I'm going to share what I use. So lately, I've been running my vocals through a Dofer A119, and then I will use it with the Wasp in conjunction just for my vocals. But I also use these two oscillators, and this is not just an oscillator, it's a filter too. I use these two to kind of create buzz underneath my tracks, so like I can add like extra bass and make it feel like, I don't know, like they're falling or something, but like audio wise. I can like kind of like adding sub but also fuzz too at the same time. And then I can also turn them up, and like I like to call it like using audio assault, so that people don't get bored. So then they like, because sometimes my voice can make people sleepy. So I use this to keep people awake. And I just mainly use my hardware. I'm learning how to rely mostly on hardware rather than plugins, because plugins, I feel like they're unreliable, more so than hardware. But I've had hardware mess up. This one messes up a lot. I cannot rely on this one at all. I suggest do not get this one ever, because it's very random with your vocals, with anything. You'll feel like you have groove all of a sudden, and then it will stop, and then I cannot figure out how to like make it go. It's like a live on its own. But this is what I use.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I want you to finish, because I just interrupted you. Finish your spiel, and then I want to ask you a question.
I forgot.
Oh, fuck.
Go on.
That was my bad. Okay. Firstly, can I give you a piece of advice?
Mm-hmm.
Get a compressor. And you,
Oh yes, I have one of those too, but not in like Dofer or
what do you use?
modular. I use a PreSonus.
All right, cool. No, yeah, get a compressor on your voice, because compressing your voice live is really important. And what I would be suggesting is compress your voice. Is it a single compressor or a double compressor? How many compressors do you...
Just single.
Okay.
I need double. I don't like compressing.
No, you got to compress. Live, you've got to compress. If you only have one compressor, put it at the end of the chain. If you have two compressors, put one on your voice. So when it comes out of the A119 that turns your voice up, the envelope follower, it's there. And then that goes into your chain. And then, or you might compress your voice very first and then compress the whole thing very last.
But my issue with compression, I'm sorry for
No, go.
you.
This is good.
My issue with compression though, for performing live, is that it can cause a lot of feedback. The more I compress it,
then
I don't know if it's a frequency or something,
no,
but it causes feedback.
It's a common problem with compression. Just don't compress too much. Also, if you're distorting with feedback built into the distortion, you're begging the gods to give you feedback.
Yeah.
because it's looking for itself. And my advice with distortion, because everyone goes, yeah, distortion is great. Make sure there is zero feedback, and because it's going to be problematic. Also, that I don't know if you use it like this, but your Dopefer, we're not supposed to be pushing Dopefer. No more pimping Dopefer. Pity, because it's such a great brand. I fucking love Dopefer. I've got a Wasp. I've got a Dopefer Wasp, same colors as your Dopefer Wasp. I actually had 2. I've actually had 3. That was so good. I got 2 Dopefer Wasps. Anyway, what you could do is grab. There is an envelope output on that Dopefer A119. And the one hang up I have with the A119 is it's a little bit noisy. Because technically speaking, it's not, and that's why you might want to be getting a preamp, or you can get a little preamp box for like $50, or you can use a compressor and chunk up, really beef up, like put compression on your mic, just minus 6 dB 3-to-1, minus 9 dB 3-to-1, just a bit, so it's taking care of the high bits. Hard knee. I see your hand, Adam. What you might want to be doing is taking the envelope output of the A119, because what that is doing is it's following the contour of the volume of what you're putting into it. And I do this a lot. I'll put a drum into that thing and then follow the contour of it. And for example, 100%, the sound in the beginning of 100% is a drum loop going into the A119. Then I take the envelope output and it goes into an oscillator. And so as the drums get louder, the oscillator goes higher. So if you do it, as your voice gets louder, the oscillator goes higher as well. So you could be using that as a really interesting way to modulate your voice. If you took that oscillator out and then like a square wave out, I think you're already doing this, and you sit that as a modulation input into the Wasp. So as you get louder, it starts biting into your sound more, and it bites in on a higher frequency. That could be really demonic. That's all I want to say. If you want to respond to that, or if Adam wants to start talking, the floor is someone else's.
I think it was actually the A119 was mainly meant for guitars, but that's why I decided to use it with my voice, because I don't use guitars. I use my voice as to substitute guitars, and the rest of it is just electronic. So that's why I used the A119. I didn't want it specifically. I wanted to like improvise, but also like test the limits, because I wanted that noise element. I didn't want clean, beautiful, soft vocals. I wanted nasty, gross vocals.
Can I just throw that in there? This will give you nasty, gross vocals. Don't worry. Another fun thing to do is, how low does your oscillator go down to, like 5 or 10 cycles per second? Can you get that sort of, like, basically what I'm saying is that you might also want to take a square output or a ramp output of your oscillator, stick it into into the Wasp, because I'm assuming, and you could be using that to modulate.
That's what I've been doing.
Excellent. A really low frequency, so your voice starts gurgling. But I got a feeling you're already doing that. Good boy. Good boy.
Yes.
I'm going to shut up now. You can talk, or Adam can talk.
I pass.
On the feedback side of things, a lot of your feedback will come from low frequencies. So if you're talking about vocals, you don't need them. You can just cut off the sub frequencies, and that would probably help improve, especially when you're compressing, because if you don't need to compress those big long low waves, as Carl was saying before about loudness and information in compressing MP3s, it is information that's going into the compressor that you don't need, that can cause, that is most likely actually to cause you havoc in the feedback realm. The other thing I was thinking about with compression is that a lot of the soundboards have nice little compressors built into them, like in the Portfolio mixer range, like the Yamahas have a nice little compressor on like 4 channels, I guess. Depends on which model you get. If you have the 12 channel, which I do, I think it's 4 channels of compression, and some gentle effects on the output as well don't suck. So you know, if you're doing a karaoke type setup for your live thing, which is literally what I'm doing, it sounds a little more lively if you run your vocals and external little bits that you're adding to the backing tracks and your backing tracks all through a little bit of a very gentle bit of room reverb at the end, a little gentle compression. It kind of glues it all together nicely. So for these, especially for these online streaming shows, I just think it sounds a little more lively. It sounds a little more glued. That's it.
I totally agree with what Adam just said about EQing the subs out before you compress it. Like that's really important. That is so important. You know, you can get things like feedback eliminators, and they're kind of cheap, and they're pretty good for live as well. But you know, it's funny that.
I'm so sorry, Carl. I just had one other thought.
Can you keep that thought? Let me finish, because let me finish my thought. I'll pass it on to your thought. The best way to eliminate feedback is to not have monitors and use in-ears. And do the in-ears quiet. For the love of God. Don't, because you can blast those things and you will hurt yourself. Don't do that. Keep them low. Get the monitors off the stage or turn them off altogether, and that's going to go a long way towards. And plus, you will always hear yourself. You will always hear the music. Everything will always be there. Sorry, Adam, the floor is yours.
Just on microphone choice alone, especially when you're in a venue, having a microphone with a tighter pickup range, supercardioids, makes a big, huge difference in your feedback. Probably wouldn't matter as much. Well, I mean, it'll matter in your living room if you have a wedge monitor, or if you're monitoring through a speaker, because anytime you're monitoring through a speaker, you have to be careful about where the back of your microphone is as well, or the sides. But if you have a supercardioid pickup, it's very tight, it's very directional. Takes a little more practice to get used to. You can't turn it, but it cuts feedback in live situations immensely. There was one other thing that I was thinking because of something Carl said, and what was it? Crikey. Sorry, lost that. That other thought.
Can I ask you, Adam?
Yeah.
What would be a good hypercardioid?
Well, I love my Super 55, my Shure Super 55. That's that big Elvis mic that I always have. That thing's a beauty, and if you have a deep voice, it likes deep voices. Other good choices, the Beta 58. You know, so if you like how your SM58 sounds and how that treats you, get the Beta. It's even better, and it's tighter. So that's a really good choice. Sennheiser also, though, 938 or 58 or some shit like that. 938, I think it is. I think the 838 or something is also a super cardio.
Thank you. I'm glad you said the Beta 58. These are sort of things that you should get, like, if you're going to do live stuff, get your mic. your mic that you take to gigs, and you plug that fucking thing on and you take it off, and even scribe your name on it saying, this is my goddamn 58. Because one, although you can put a 58 through hell, most of them have been put through hell. And fucking people yelling into it, and they're full of disease and shit, and they are, like, dude. And I've seen people disinfect 58s by getting Glen 20. You guys know what Glen 20 is? Like, basically toilet spray. Spraying them with fucking... And it sounds like you're kissing a goddamn urinal. So, yeah, when I started taking my own mic, which came with the TC, and it's a fucking good mic, whatever, and my own headset and my own monitors, like in-ear monitors, it reduced the chances of anyone else fucking your show. Because every 58 sounds different, and pub 58s, that it's usually bad or awful or shit, and they all smell like a toilet. So use your own stuff. Yeah.
And replace your screens every now and again for your own
Yeah.
stuff. Like, the screens do get shitty over time, and they start... So here's an interesting thing about Shure. The screens, the foam in the screens themselves is acoustically designed. So that's why it sounds funny if you get an aftermarket one that's not a Shure. It sounds called muffly. You have to get the Shure aftermarket ones. They do get shitty over time. They get clogged, they get bent, they get they deteriorate, especially if you spray shit into it that will eat the foam. And so every once in a while you want to replace your filter screens, and just for your own use anyway.
Thank you. Also, I just want to say welcome, Eric. I've never seen you. Welcome. And if you have any questions, man, just put your hand up and jump in, or you want to bring something else, just,
Another thing on microphones, you can go to like Guitar Center and use the demo stands and try a bunch of different microphones with the headphones on. Like, I don't know what they're doing now, like pandemic wise and that kind of stuff, but at least pre-pandemic, the demo stations are pretty good, and they have a bunch of the popular common mics, like all the ones that we've talked about, and a whole bunch of studio mics too. So it's very worth going through and trying different microphones and seeing how your voice sounds on them. And don't give a shit, because everybody else in the store is a fucking musician too. Like, no problem getting loud on the microphone with the headphones on to see what you sound like.
And if you're confused, just get a Beta 58. Or if you can't afford a Beta 58, just get a 58 and buy it new. It's funny because live sound is, that's a big conversation. And, if I was to push that a little further, I would say get a rack box, like a Gator or something, and make sure it's big enough to handle what you have now, and make sure there's about 3 extra units in there, because you will fill them in the future. Have everything racked up, so all you have to do is take the front and back off that thing, run power to it, and it's go. Because as somebody who's dealt with a lot of bands, definitely leave air spaces. Thank you, Adam. It's the biggest pain in the ass when a band gets up there and they pull stuff out of a suitcase, put it on a stand, and wire it up. And it's like, it takes you half an hour to do that, then 10 minutes to pull down. Every other band on the show needs that time. So fucking get your shit together. So yeah, rack everything. Have it all racked up, have it all ready to go, boom, boom, boom. And if you have to use pedals or synths that you lay out, have the cables color-coded. And also, get yourself one of these. It's a headlamp. Boom, headlamp. Hold on, it's upside down. I look like a complete professional. And I'm telling you, man, because...
Man, man, roadie man.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You should see my roadie gig. Like, I've got 2 friggin' mag lights ready in case I need them. I have a utility belt, and my utility belt has lights. I have 2 different lights at least. I have at least 1 mag light and the headset, because when you're on stage, it's bloody dark. You can't see a fucking thing. This one also has kind of a quasi UV thing, which is handy. My utility belt has a first aid area, which has got band-aids and disinfectants and earplugs. And I've also got a utility area that's full of like a USB drive and different connectors. And then I have another one, which is my passport and money. Bit of advice when you're on tour or doing a show, keep the money on your body at all times. And I have safety pins that have locked it closed. Yeah, even when you're doing a show and you go out there looking like Batman, because and a Leatherman, if you can afford a Leatherman, Diana, you should talk about this because you've got more theatrical experience than any of us. Leathermans, like, they're little tools and they're great, and a little shifter spanner, and you know the thing's going to weigh a kilogram or 2, but it makes you look tough. And yeah, you just gotta, don't rely on anything. Know where your shit is on your belt. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
Most of those tools are also in my tech kit.
Excellent. And I'll also say that we're going to close down soonish if we can, just because life. And then we're going to all stream. Everyone watching, we're going to stream over to MTV TV, and Brian is on at midday or in about half an hour with Space Couch. So if anybody has any closing questions or anything they want to throw out, I would love to hear from you, and we've got a whole bunch of amazing brains here that can answer questions. Julius, I see your beautiful hand.
Maybe somebody can give me a recommendation for a good fuzz effect. Like, do you know what I mean? Like distortion, like fuzzy effect. I would prefer plug-in, but hardware is also fine. Go.
Like for voice, you mean?
I would use it on a bass guitar, but I would use it on voice later too, maybe.
A Boss DS1.
Boss DS1.
Oh yeah, here they go. Eric, you mentioned the Camel Crush. Let's talk about this. I'll just say the Boss DS1 is so cheap, and it's so stock standard awesome. Also a big muff. Thing you've got to remember about these things is what's coming into them. If it's actually a bass guitar, the input is designed for bass guitar or electric guitar, which means it's going to get amplified. If you run a synthesizer or, heaven forbid, a modular into that, modulars run at 5 volts, which is fucking loud. Keyboards are around about 0, and guitars are around about -10 or something. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is that if you're going to run a synthesizer or something into it, okay, thank you. If you're going to run a modular or a synthesizer, you have to turn the volume down. You might even, like, I have to turn shit down by 30 decibels. And 30. And the other thing about a lot of these stomp pedals is the output is designed to go into an amp, which is going to get amplified. So that means you have to turn it up a shitload. And unfortunately, you're going to be introducing a lot of noise. Yeah, -30. Thank you, Adam. You're going to be introducing a lot of noise when you turn it up by 30 dB so you can get it into your desk. But noise is good. I'm going to shut over. Eric, you mentioned the Camel Crush. Please, the floor is yours. I want to hear from you. Go. Hold on, I don't have your voice. There we go. Oh, okay. I know your pain. All right, sorry about that. Camel Crush is awesome. And, but if anybody wants to talk about plugins, and there's also modular ones as well that are bloody amazing. Dopefor does one. Oh, actually, I'll talk. Do you want a modular one, or should I talk about modular ones for 30 seconds? Or okay,
Why not?
I believe one of the greatest distortion units ever made is the Dope for A137, and they also do the Wave Shaper. Help me, 21 or something. I can't remember, but the 137 is a Wave Shaper, and it distorts shit so good. So it's looking for a modular level, which is fucking plus 5 volts. It's looking for loud modular signals, and it's going to alter stuff radically, and it will alter your voice radically. It's not just distortion or fuzz. This is going to go into the harmonic content and start pulling stuff out and twisting and turning and morphing the actual wave shapes in your voice, as well as distorting it if you want. So what you get out of this thing is insane. And Tanner, if you can help, like they've got a distortion level. Like there are so many modular things around, and I just go for this one because it's so fucking cheap. It's like $150. Or I don't know what that is. I mean, like fucking Dope is in Germany, so you won't have to worry about Zoll and all that shit. See, I know a German word. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's really cheap. It's really reliable. I've had this one for 15 years, and I've toured it. All my Dope for shit, I've toured it. That's why I push Dope for it. It's so fucking stable. And cheap, and it works good. Works real good, doesn't it? Go.
Very good. What was the model number again of the Dope thing?
137. And there's a what the hell is it? There's another one. Hold on. Dope for, hold on. Is it the 136? Yes, it's the 136. So the 136 and the 137 are bloody awesome. The 137 is better. There's a 137-Mark II, which fucks shit up even more. And the 136 it's interesting. They've also have, I think it's, I don't know the number of it, but they do have a distortion thing. But if you're looking at something cheaper, you can get the aforementioned Roland Stomp boxes for like $50 or $100. You know, and then you get into the heavy metalizer and all of that shit. It's great stuff. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let someone else talk, and we're going to try and wrap this up soon. Because, oh God, look at all those hands. Alex, I see your hand. Then I'm going to throw it over to Tanner. Alex, go.
Okay. If you have a mixing desk lying around or a preamp, it can be really unique and of course cheap because you already have it to just overdrive the preamps a bit, drive them really hard. And for plugins, I've heard that Soundtiles do a really good distortion plugin, but I've never used it myself. I've just heard good things. And also, I think it's important to, if you buy a dedicated fuzz, to buy one that's made for bass, because I feel like sometimes the frequency of guitar pedals is more tuned to guitars and less for bass, and the bass pedals are more full range.
You speak the truth. Thank you, Alex. Was there anything else you want to add, or Tanner, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I use a Dystopia Noise Crush filter by Dreadbox, and that one is really good for bass and voice too, but I found more so bass. It can make a bass sound like guitar, or make a bass just turn into something very, very, I don't know, very aggressive, and I like it. And it has a random noise gate generator, so you can just let it run and run and run by itself too if you wanted to, and that's what I've been using. I suggest it, and it's good. And I'm not trying to push Dreadbox. It's just really pretty.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanner. Yeah, so there's so many. So were you after something for an actual bass guitar?
Yes.
All right, cool. That's my thoughts. And everybody else, if anybody else has any thoughts, please jump in. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this up. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna wrap this up. All right. I want to, everyone, thank you so much for this, and I fucking get such a hoot out of these things. If you're on Patreon, as I mentioned, these are going to start becoming the video deliverables. This month is the part 3 of the merch thing, and the merch thing is going to be wild. And then I'm going to start doing these because I fucking love these sessions. I learned so much. Once we're done, Diana is going to rate us on over to MTV TV, and we're going to get some MTV TV. And, wow, now my mic's overloading. Thank you so much for joining me. And before we go, I'm going to do some pimpage, because it's all about pimpage. My life is just pimp. What does that even mean? Join us on Friday for the gig from hell, and Adam's going to be playing, and Brian from the Gothsicle is going to be playing. Brian is now using a metalizer on his vocals, and it's fucking great. And people and Lockie and the Basement Labs, and they're going to be doing a real hardware set, and it's going to be from hell. And remember, keep an eye on Angelspit's Twitch. Just follow it, because there's heaps of crazy shit going on. Keep 10 o'clocks on the weekend spec. 10 o'clock Sunday. 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're done. That's it. We're done. Good night, you rock. And everyone wave. Wave.